Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Director Watch, an Awards Watch podcast that attempts to get inside the mind of cinema's greatest auteurs, explore what drives them, and maybe we go on a few unrelated tangents along the way. I'm Ryan McQuade, executive editor here at Awards Watch, and joining me, as always, is my co-host and first mate, Jay Ledbetter.
I got one question for you, Ryan. Can you paint with all the colors of the wind?
Oh, my God.
We're talking the New World.
I was wondering if you were going to sing it or when you were going to bring it up.
I have been singing a lot on the pod.
You have been. I was just anticipating you tickling the ivories a little bit just because of the Disney movie, and I just knew it was out there. But thank God you got that out of the way. And you got.
Can I tell you something, Ryan?
Oh God, here we go.
I watched Pocahontas.
Did you watch? You watched Disney's Pocahontas?
Pocahontas, yeah, for this podcast, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And thoughts? Just real quick.
Not very good.
Not very good.
Not particularly good. No.
No.
I don't think it's quite as thoughtful as the New World.
Is that part of the Renaissance? Does that count in the Disney Renaissance?
I mean, I guess technically it does.
Is it like count in the back half?
I mean, if you look at the history of that movie, and we'll just get one tangent out of the way right away. The crazy thing about Pocahontas was that was very explicitly about legitimizing, they got the love with Beauty and the Beast, and this was about, we're coming for Best Picture, baby. We're doing it. And so the A team all went to Pocahontas, and the B team went to Lion King. And
oh, really?
Boy, did that not work out. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. But it's a bad film that I think, it has a lot of issues for sure, but also in some ways kind of deserves more credit for some of its depictions. Huh. But generally not a particularly entertaining film, in my opinion. So
it does have
that's its greatest sin.
It does have a connection, though.
I'll do a connection for you. You ready?
Yeah.
New World, which has some scenes that are very reminiscent of Apocalypto.
Okay.
Which was directed by Mel Gibson.
God's sakes. That's
Mel Gibson was John Smith.
Well, that's
my 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Well, that's fair, but also Christian Bale's in both movies. So
that's true.
You could have just done that and not mentioned.
I took a little more circuitous.
You could not have mentioned Mel Gibson on the show, and it would have been okay. We would have been. The world would have lived. The New World would have lived without it. And yet
there was a New World when those voicemails came out of Mel Gibson.
Okay, all right. We're not doing that today.
That's a bonus episode.
No, it's not a bonus. What? Just breaking down the voice memos?
Remember when I said we was going to be serious on the Malick episodes?
Yeah, and then you're like completely opposite now, like 3 episodes in. Yeah. It's fantastic. We're not alone though. I think this guest is regretting returning to this podcast.
Yeah, most people
do. She was last heard on Days of Thunder. It's Awards Watch contributor Karen Peterson. Hello, Karen.
Hey guys, I really have some laundry to get to, so
Karen, do you have thoughts on the animated Pocahontas since we're throwing them out here right at the top?
Okay, here's what I will say about it. I watched it once in 1995
and never again.
And I enjoyed it in 1995 and I never watched it again. So
seems like it's time to put it on.
Is it though?
Not one of the favorite films from the Disney Renaissance, huh?
No, definitely not. I mean, I think that there are some things that it does well from my memory. I mean, 30 years ago almost, but some of the music was fine back in the day, but has gotten so overplayed that it's like, I don't ever want to hear The Colors of the Wind again after tonight.
Is it after tonight?
Just wait till I sing it.
Oh, here we go. That was a scene they cut out. That's actually in the extended cut of the New World. They brought that music over. Is that the worst film in the Disney Renaissance?
Maybe
it's probably the least canonized of the
I wouldn't say that. Probably Rescues Down Under is probably the least canonized.
Oh, that's true. I always forget that one's in there. I watched that one so much when I was growing up.
But that's the best of the Rescuers films, and it's a great movie.
Of the two?
Yeah, the two. Well, yeah, there's two of them. Yeah, they should.
I don't know. I think Hunchback of Notre Dame probably is the worst one.
Oh, I like that.
That one's really been reclaimed.
Yeah, because it's kind of dark.
I just sorry, what I should say, I think that it's a better movie, but it stands out in this time period for kind of the wrong reasons. It's really not for kids.
It's doesn't.
It's a tonal disaster. It has like the silly gargoyles, and then there's like hellfire.
Singing
this
again.
Woman won't accept my love for her,
and I'm the villain, and I have her scarf. But Pocahontas is a Disney princess, so that's probably why it also gets a little bit higher.
They would remake Hunchback of Notre Dame in live action way before they did Pocahontas. I
don't think they would ever touch Pocahontas. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Jinx J, you owe me a Coke. Yeah, and the best one for me is Beauty and the Beast. That's their best one.
Oh yeah. Beauty and the Beast is fantastic. Little Mermaid, I love. Aladdin, Mulan, those are all great.
No, she didn't say Lion King.
I'm a Lion King boy myself.
I forgot about Lion King. Sorry.
Okay.
love Lion King.
I love that one.
I'm looking forward to Mufasa later this year.
Yeah, just a bizarre thing that exists that I hope is good.
I'm rooting for it big time because of Barry Jenkins.
Sure.
That's the only reason why I'm actually rooting for a Disney movie this year is because it's kind of one of my favorite filmmakers behind it. But we're going to hear no more about Disney. Well, probably Jay will bring it up a little bit more later. I don't know. We're not going to talk about Disney anymore. We're here to talk about Terrence Malick. We're here to talk about The New World, which is a movie about John Smith and Pocahontas. When you really get down to it, but it's not a musical. It's a serious, beautiful movie done by Terrence Malick. It's a Terrence Malick movie. I'm really excited to talk about this. Karen, when we asked you which movie you wanted to do, you picked this one. And one, I'm just shocked you wanted to come back
just to tear it down.
And two, I was shocked because Terrence Malick does not have a film starring Tom Cruise. That was the other part where I'm like, wow, she watches other movies outside of Tom Cruise movies?
I do occasionally watch movies that Tom Cruise is not in. Yeah.
You dabble?
Usually it happens by accident, and then it's like, oh, actually that was pretty good. I'll watch another one. But
would you have put Cruise in this movie?
No.
Okay.
I would not.
That makes either good or bad, depending on her thoughts on the film, I guess. But whether it needs him or not. Because if you don't like the film, then you don't want him to be near it. But if you love the film, you don't want him to break up what's already a part of it. That's what I'm trying to get out there. Anyway, why did you pick The New World? But more importantly, what's your relationship with Terrence Malick as a director, Karen? And what do you like about him? What don't you like about him? Thoughts on maybe The New World?
My general thoughts on Terrence Malick, or my relationship with him, as you put it, is complicated. Some of his films I think are just a little is putting it mildly, but I think some of his films are, for me, too self-indulgent, and I don't necessarily always enjoy them. I chose this. There are a few that I do really enjoy, and this is actually my favorite Terrence Malick film. Like, out of all the ones that I've seen, which I've not seen all of them, but this one, it really, I think one of the things that is kind of, I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping, like starting and stopping sentences, but I think one of the things for me when I think about Malick as a filmmaker is his films, no matter what the subject is, they're always about feelings. They evoke moods and emotions. And so sometimes those films don't work for me because I just don't like how I'm feeling when I'm watching them. This one, though, there's just so much beauty, and it's the scenery, it's the vibrance of the surroundings, but it's also just these people. And I think it really captures something that has been very difficult for people to depict, as we were just talking about Pocahontas, which comes out 10 years before this one. I think that it captures, it's more focused on sort of bringing to life the mythology around Pocahontas and John Smith, rather than really going for any sort of historical accuracy. But I think it does it in a way that just really makes you feel so many of the emotions that people in this time period probably felt, the awe and the wonder and the hope and the fear and the frustration and, just all these things of these two civilizations kind of crashing into each other. And so for that, I find this to be just such a fascinating and just really, really beautiful film.
Love it. Love it. Jay, we know that you have been reading 6 books for this series. So what did you learn about, I guess, the process in which Terrence Malick made the New World?
Yeah, this is actually a little bit of a less interesting development process. So he wrote this script originally.
Then never mind. Don't talk about it then, I guess.
It just doesn't have quite the, alternate castings and things like that. It was kind of a streamlined production and, a big studio production that went a little more smoothly than you might normally think. If there's anything that's most interesting about it, it's the scoring of the film is who was it? James Horner. Yeah. Who he has a quote where he said I've never felt so let down by a filmmaker in my life, was his quote about Terrence Malick, the process of working with him, because he was like, he just wanted to put a bunch of like Wagner and Mozart in the movie, and he didn't want to use any of my music, and it was stupid. That guy has no idea how to use music. So he hates Terrence Malick. But let's go back to the start here. So after Thin Red Line, he sort of got into some documentary filmmaking, and he started writing under a pseudonym. The pseudonym he chose was Lingard Jervey. Don't know the significance of that, but that was the pseudonym that he chose. And the films that he worked on most intimately were a film called The Beautiful Country, which I have not seen, from the director of the Liam Neeson movie Cold Pursuit, if you remember that one.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that movie.
To forget it.
Yeah. And a David Gordon Green movie called Undertow, which I also have not seen. But that stars Jamie Bell. And I think early David Gordon Green actually owes a lot to Terrence Malick. And then he became weird franchise comedy guy. But early David Gordon Green is very like Texas naturalist. So he's producing a bunch of documentaries and writing on the side. And the movie that he gets very attached to is a Che Guevara film. He is determined to make that movie. And he reaches out to Emmanuel Lubezki, and they're very much aligned on, let's make this movie. Let's do it in kind of the handheld style that you see in the New World. But the studio eventually is like, I don't know, like there's some unrest in South America. He wants to film on location. I don't know if this is going to work. And it just kind of falls through. And he has the opportunity. He's presented with the opportunity to make the New World. And he says to Lubezki, look, man, I can't do the Che movie anymore, but would you want to work with me on this? And Lubezki, the quote that he had was, I'll shoot 7th unit if you want me to. What are you talking about? And then Terrence Malick sends Lubezki a 300-page script for the New World, most of which was not used, because that's how Terrence Malick operates.
I just love this giant pile of papers that are never going to get used anyway, just showing up at Lubezki's house.
It is. It's so
a door
interesting
stopper, if there ever was one.
When you hear people talk about Malick's quote unquote scripts, it does just sound like the ramblings of a madman. It sounds like the notebooks from Seven, but turned into beautiful movies. And the first person he reaches out to after Lubezki, obviously Jack Fisk, what an asset he is. And he just does incredible work in this movie. He's originally like, let's go to Canada. I think that's going to work best. So much of kind of the Virginia coast is developed, but he finds this one stretch of land in Virginia that has nothing but like a fish market in it, some sort of fish compound. And he's like, well, this is here. We can't shoot here unless if this wasn't here, we could do it. And the people who own it are like, we were going to tear it down anyway. You can tear it down. It's fine. You pay for the demolition. You're good. You can rent this land for a couple months and shoot your movie here. So it was just all coming together. And Fisk, one interesting quote he had about working with Malick, which I think speaks so much to the Malick experience. He said that working with Malick reminds him of working with, of all people, Roger Corman, where he said there was more energy than money involved with the process. So it was just kind of pushing a boulder up a hill in a lot of ways. And it just really invigorates Fisk, obviously, because he works with Malick so many times. And then the casting generally was fairly straightforward. I think they actually had Colin Farrell in mind, which is interesting because during this time he was doing a lot of blockbusters. But I mean, look, handsome man, I will say. He's looking fantastic in this movie. And
Karen, thoughts on that?
I mean, what else is there to say? Jay got it all.
He's
my
looking
photo
great.
tonight.
We'll talk about it.
He's my background tonight.
It's a perfect background. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's looking fantastic. And then Christian Bale is kind of the second person they reach out to. And he was weirdly going through this weird time. He was on a mini sabbatical in Chile with his wife, Chile, excuse me. And he got messages from two people while he was there. Werner Herzog and Terrence Malick about wanting to work with him. So obviously that would be
Rescue
Dawn. Is that movie?
Rescue Dawn.
I was going to say Red Dawn. It's not. It's Rescue
It's
Dawn.
not Red Dawn. It's two totally different movies.
And Bale had actually auditioned for The Thin Red Line and not gotten it, but he gets the part. Farrell's got the part, and they're looking for Pocahontas. And the thing about Pocahontas, historically at this time, most historians assume she was about 12 during the time that this story was happening. So the difficulty there is you want to be historically accurate, and the actress that they ended up choosing for the role was certainly young. I think she was 14 when the film
14,
shot.
15. Yeah.
I think she's about our age, Ryan. And they had this the Koryanka Kilcher, right? Is that right?
Koryanka
Kilcher. She was actually up for a role in this miniseries called Into the West, and somebody just happened across her photo in a pile of people auditioning, and they were like, she could be Pocahontas. And then sure enough, it was meant to be. She was the choice. Everybody thought she just had this real kind of ethereal quality to her. I just want to read you this quote that Colin Farrell said about her, which is just immaculate. And then I'll stop talking soon. But this is Colin Farrell, who every quote he has about this movie is so thoughtful and deep. He says this about Kilcher. In a word, she's amazing. I don't know where it comes from, but she has a smile that could light up both hemispheres at the same time, and she has depths of light and darkness which could make the world stop moving. So he was a fan. I thought she had a lot of talent and character to her. And there are so many others that are just like that. Him talking about Malick is amazing. He's such a, again, like really thoughtful guy. This was kind of during his dark period too, where he was having a lot of drug problems and making sex tapes while styled as Bullseye, right? Not the best times in his life personally, but he still just had this quality to him. And we'll talk plenty about him and how his taste is just impeccable. Some other little fun facts about this film: Andrew Dominik actually did second unit work on this movie. So some of the nature shots that you see in this are very kind of reminiscent of
either way.
The Dominik work. I mean, he makes a pretty movie. No matter what you think about all of his movies, he makes a good looking movie. And he's made some great movies. I think mostly great movies. And then his most recent one left a bad taste in.
I think that's the problem. Is his last movie is an abomination. So
exactly, but then apparently Terrence Malick also loves bird watching, and he worked with historians. They apparently recreated what they believed to be.
Can you stop right there? You're telling me that a man obsessed with shooting nature loves birds?
They asked him to be in that what was the Jack Black bird watching movie?
Oh, did they really?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were being I was like, wow, what a horrible fact.
It was supposed to originally star him and Thomas Pynchon, and they both turned it down.
Is it the big season or the best season?
Something season? I don't know, whatever. But apparently he worked with like ecologists to recreate what they believe was the sound that a now extinct species that would have existed in Virginia at this time would make, which is just a crazy thing to do. And they also resurrected this dead language with this guy who works at the Smithsonian. The attention to detail historically, despite the fact that or at least like culturally, despite the fact that the history itself is fabricated to varying degrees, you could certainly say, but as far as the cultural detail, the world detail, it was very, very specific. And it's just an immaculately designed film. So much of what is presented aesthetically is so thought through, while also having that Malick spontaneity. And if I can now just move to my thoughts on the film itself, I think it's
nope.
Okay, all right, I'm done. I've talked long enough. I mean, you're right.
Well,
I should stop talking.
Well, really quickly before you do, though, what I want to just say to the point of what you were just talking about with some of the level of detail that he put into this, it's fascinating to hear that, especially things like the animal sound and things, because it's so unnecessary. Nobody alive that could ever see that movie would ever think, well, that's not what that would have sounded like. And so we don't need him to do that. But that just really says a lot about him as a filmmaker, that he would go to those lengths to really try to make something that just can't exist in any other way.
Well, he is such a fascinating filmmaker because he does have that intense attention to detail as far as design and aesthetic is concerned. But he's also the guy who's like a golden retriever, where he's like, squirrel, shoot that. We don't need to shoot the scene. There's a squirrel here, and we're not going to rehearse, and it's going to be largely improvised. He's like half David Fincher, half, I don't know who's the most improvisational director around. But it's an incredibly interesting way to make a film, and nobody really does it like he does it. And it speaks to, I just think he's such a smart guy who I think just has so many things going on in his brain at all times, where the stuff that he feels like should be controlled, he wants to control to like the T, like all of the minutia should be controlled if that's what he wants. But he also believes that spontaneity is how you capture real truth, like where he's trying to capture a worldly, philosophical, transcendent truth. That stuff can only be captured when you put people in the exact setting that he wants to put them in, and then he lets the natural state of things take over. And I think this film, as much as any other, probably speaks to that. And I also think it's really important in the context of his career. This is the turning point for him, I think, where every film after this kind of adopts the style that he established in this movie, where there's something very painterly about something like Days of Heaven. And I would say also about The Thin Red Line, which had to be more choreographed and couldn't have been quite as spontaneous just because of how intricate some of those set pieces were. But here he is just adopting this ethereal handheld style with Lubezki, who would become one of his great collaborators. And I just think I'm going to say about every movie that it's one of his best movies, just because I think they're all so good. But I think this is one of his best movies, one of his most important movies with regards to his career and his style. And to me, it really feels like in the last 5 minutes of this movie, it's like, oh, Tree of Life. Like that's where this starts. That's where he moves from impressionism, I would say largely minimalism, to really expressionistic tendencies, where he's much bigger and bolder while still maintaining sort of the camera techniques in a lot of ways that he established in this film and he established in some of his other films. But just the imagery starts to feel significantly different than what we've seen before. I also think this movie has one of the great final lines in the history of cinema that brings me to tears, especially as a dad. Every Malick movie hits a little different once you're a dad, and this one is no different. I think it's a masterpiece. We can talk all about kind of the contradictions that I think actually only make it better, and this idea of worldliness. I want to talk a lot about what does the title of this movie means, because there's 6,000 different directions you could take it. But I could talk about this movie for hours. So everybody strap in. Strap in.
Point of order. The Big Year is the
Big
title
Year
of the Bird movie with Owen Wilson, Jack Black, and Steve Martin. Just wanted to make sure that
who directed that one?
It was what's his face? David Frankel. Devil Wears Prada guy.
Yeah, we're gonna do that one eventually.
Honestly, what, Karen?
I was just gonna say that was quite the whiplash. Jay goes from this beautiful, like, statement about Malick and just loveliness, and then the Bird movie, Jack Black.
You know what show you're on? What are you talking about?
They wanted Malick.
There's so much
Malick to be in it.
Just whiplash.
I would love. Well, he didn't direct Whiplash, but he also did direct Hope Springs, Marley.
Maybe
and
I would
Me,
have liked Whiplash more.
And Collateral Beauty.
Oh yeah,
I'm telling you, this would be a fascinating series.
Is he going to do the Devil Wears Prada sequel?
Movies.
I don't know if he is doing the sequel or not.
I think Malick should do it.
Yes.
Malick should do the Devil Wears Prada.
He should do sequel. It. Let him do it.
Man can't even finish his Jesus movie, let alone wouldn't be able to finish that movie.
Let him do it.
Oh my God. I saw that they're doing a Devil Wears Prada musical on Broadway. And
it makes sense as a musical, I think.
It does kind of, yeah. Well, most romantic comedies do. I think there's, like
is that a romantic comedy?
Yeah, it's a
the romance element of it is the worst part about it.
Yeah, it's probably, but like it falls in. Well, how would you categorize it? Just as a comedy?
Comedy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Workplace comedy.
Workplace comedy. Yeah, workplace comedy. There you go. That's better. Okay. Well, I don't know what to say about the New World, because I guess Jay stole everything from us, Karen.
I got plenty more. If you just want me to keep going.
So I saw this movie back in 2006, early 2007. Got the Blu-ray, Blockbuster, took it home. Had no idea. I was not the person I was, and so I was like, "Oh, cool! Somebody made a new take on Pocahontas with Colin Farrell in it. Wow!" And
I'm so glad I didn't see this movie when I was 15.
And I saw this movie and I thought, "What the hell is this thing?"
Remind me to tell you guys about when I saw it the first time.
Okay, go on. We'll do that. I was just kind of blown away by it. I mean, obviously, it was exactly how Jay kind of described it. It is a dreamlike introduction to Terrence Malick. This was my first Malick I ever saw. So if you had never seen this before, welcome to the show. But I was kind of then nervous throughout the rest of my life to kind of go back to Malick over the years, until I was in college, because I was like, I don't remember. I've been kind of like, this is for a young person. I was about 13, 14 at the time. It was like, whoa, I don't think I'm smart enough to handle a movie like this. And to be honest, with most Terrence Malick movies, I still don't think I'm very smart enough to handle everything that's being thrown at me. And I'm not reading the books that Jay did, but this go round was the best experience I've had with it so far. I think this movie is immaculate. And I think that from the beginning, with Warner's music and the way it is sketching out this new world, and it feels, you're right, Jade, it's this like intersection between being sort of the standard structure of a film here, because we all know this story, right? It's a very familiar story. It's the most familiar story within his filmography, that he's essentially retelling something that
it is the most traditional film he has made in the 21st century.
Exactly. And yet it still has the tendencies of a man that we would then later see be more floaty and experimental, and very much
the beginning of
unique.
That.
Yeah. And it's unique in that sense because, simple conversation. And I mean, this is when the editing happens, where you have 4 different editors sort of surrounding this film and trying to piece it together. And that's where you have the Christopher Plummer quotes that come in a couple of years later.
Incredible stuff.
When he's talking about, it was, I think, the year when he was up for the Oscar for Beginners, and he won it, and he was talking at a round table. And, it's one of my favorite clips ever, because I think it does summarize a lot of what Karen was talking about with Malick, because he does call him pretentious. He does say he needs a writer, but he also calls him a genius in the same. And so it's a lot to what Jay was saying.
Wonderful films, but I said, Terry, you need a writer.
Right? Yeah, and he said he'd never work with them ever again, which is the case with most people. It seems like
not a lot of
recurring guests,
collaborators. Yeah,
because I think because in all honesty, this
is a guy annoying.
It seems annoying. This is a guy that took 20 years off in between his second and third film, and he really actually discovers his technique and what he wants to do. His fourth film, 25-ish, 30 years later, it seems like. And that's wild, because it usually is someone finding themselves within their first couple of films, and it's in a span of 5 to 6 years. And then they have a style that they carry on for the rest of the remaining of their careers. And Jay, you're absolutely right. His style is picked up here. This is when you start having the floating imagery and the beautiful voiceovers, and it's all about the image, and the dialogue is secondary in so many ways.
That has been the case his entire career.
I think so, but I think it starts becoming more prominent here.
The amount of narration in this is
the editing style is when it's really I was but yet I was so transfixed by everything going on and following it so clearly. It is the movie built by a madman, and yet it is I mean, to answer your question about what does this title mean, it means multiple things. I mean, it means kind of 2 things, and it means something to each character. I think it means something different for John Smith, and I think it means something different for Pocahontas. And we can talk about those meanings and flesh those out here in a second. But I think that really, the movies. This is a movie that I was watching, and I just recently, a couple of weeks ago, watched Peter Weir's Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. And I'm not saying that those 2 films have anything in common. Other than this, you can just tell when a movie is in the hands of somebody that wants to make something and craft something with care. And the images from this restoration of the ships in the water, and the settlements that are built in the mud, and the filth.
Love a big boat. Love a big boat.
I mean, it's them getting off in England in the second half of the film, off the boat into this narrow, claustrophobic town in seaport it's incredible. The attention to detail is phenomenal. And so, yes, it is a dance in his head, it seems like, between trying to keep the narrative flowing and intact, while also trying to have this care for this production design, which Jack Fisk, again, one of the great collaborators is like next to Malick as the MVP of this entire series. And yet it doesn't feel like it gets lost. I know that it might get lost in some other films, and it does for a lot of other people down the road, but it still feels like it's fully intact. And for a movie that had 300 pages and has an extended cut, or actually, I think it has 2 cuts, if I'm not mistaken. It has
3 cuts: theatrical, extended, and whatever the other ones are called.
And then the final cut, the semi-extended or final cut. I only watched the theatrical cut, and I still think it is a masterpiece, and I think it's beautiful. And I want to put like 100 images of this movie up on my wall as like artwork, because I think that it is this is no shock at all for listeners that have already listened to a couple episodes, but every time I watch a Malick movie, or I've rewatched them, I'm like, God, that might be the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. That might be the most beautiful shot I've ever seen. Nature just looks so much better in his
But it
hands.
doesn't feel as framed as Days of Heaven.
No,
where
it feels
you have,
it, it
the
feels loose.
incredible, very again painterly shot of all the locusts flying around.
Yeah,
and,
that's like
kind of the definitive image of that movie. But here, it really does just feel like they stumbled into it, and they really capture beauty in an accidental, again, kind of like divine way, which gives this incredibly spiritual feeling to the film.
It gives
And
a
I think it's kind of
time
the Malick
machine kind of
magic.
quality
Yeah.
to it, in a weird way.
And I think one of the ways that they capture that is by not a lot of still frames, but you get a sense of movement, like watching long sequences of just tall grass blowing or leaves in the trees or things like that. You really get to feel like you're just immersed in this world or at least that you really want to be.
And I think in a lot of ways that speaks to, well, something that really Malick has been exploring his whole career, but something that I really think he expanded on with The Thin Red Line, which is sort of nature's indifference to humanity's folly. And yeah, I'll tell you, weirdly, the movie that I was thinking about as I was watching it this time was 2001: A Space Odyssey, where you have these colonists who are coming in these massive boats and all of this technology and this idea of quote unquote progress that really is the downfall of this civilization. It is entirely like a Paradise Lost story without, I think, entirely making the indigenous characters like half-baked ideas rather than characters. I do feel like they're wholly realized characters. Although Pocahontas is certainly representative of some sort of Mother Nature type character in a way that Malick loves his ethereal female figure at the center of his movies, which Pocahontas is in this. But I think that performance is so incredible, it doesn't really matter, as are most of the performances that Malick gets from those type of roles. But it's this idea of nature and the idea of defying nature in the name of some sort of false sense of superiority. The reality of the Jamestown settlement was not that they were trying to bring some sort of higher quality of life to America, and this lie that they were trying to implant Christianity and morality and culture and civilization to the natives. They just wanted to make money, right? They wanted to steal the crops and the resources of this land. They wanted to commodify the world of these indigenous people. And that brings about war and violence and death. And you speak to the title of this film, it boils down to this idea of what is a world, right? When something as intrusive as the colonialization of America occurs, is that world over? Like, is when nuclear weapons are introduced to the world, is that the introduction of an entirely new world? Or is it about Pocahontas's desire to find her mother in some sort of afterlife, which is the true new world that the movie is speaking to? And that's the philosophical nature of all of Malick's movies, and the stuff that makes me think about them for days and days and days after I watch them, and why I speak for 15 straight minutes on a podcast. And it just has so much going on, and it's about America, and it's about mortality, and it's about love. It is in many ways playing like a fairy tale, but it is playing like a fairy tale in the same sense that history plays like a fairy tale, where there is this survivor bias to it. The victors write history, right? And these people who came to America and pushed people out and killed thousands of people in the name of quote unquote progress, this movie poses the question, is that actually against everyone's best interest? Because this idea of a connection to nature and a true sense of community is what is upended through this process. And that's deep, and it's thought-provoking, and it's Malickian, dare I say. it's cynical in a way that I don't think people generally think of Malick, but there's also a real sense of romance to it.
Yeah, but Jay, I think you're absolutely right, because I mean, I know we talked about the Disney movie at the beginning of this movie, at the beginning of this review, but that is probably the most popular, I guess you could say, version of this, where people have seen that one the most and they haven't seen this film. And I think it is if you put those two films and you told the story before, it's not interesting if you just frame it as a love story, which this is at times a fairly much is a love story.
It's very much about
love. And it also is about the heartbreaking nature of it. But I also think too, it is about the reality, like you're mentioning too, and the danger of colonization, the danger of making a fresh start or a new start in a new world, and how our history is built off of the back of death and destruction, and that they're not going to teach you that in the history books. They're going to tell you, oh, we moved here and we put the crops down and we settled here and we moved our families, and generationally, over time, this is yours. It never was. And we can say that we're running from, religious persecution, or however you want to describe it historically. And that is a part of it. But then there also is the other side of it, of that a culture was already thriving. Land was stolen. People's lives were taken. And for what? So then people with corsets could then come over when the settlement is built, and she is living in there, and she is emotionally distraught because she is separated from her people and cast aside from them because of her wanting to be with this man that is against all the values, and also being a good person and not allowing these people to die, when this movie is extremely political and actually very relevant to the fact that we haven't aged out of being on one side or the other and wanting to rip each other's throats out. And there is nobody there. And when someone finds some ounce of compassion, that ounce of compassion then leads to all out war. And it's actually, it's an extremely devastating point of view that I think Malick is looking at history here and saying that there has never been peace. There has been bloodshed, and we have never actually really looked at it, and we have not really examined it. And weirdly enough, this movie comes out in 2005, and I know that this is how I interpret it as I was watching this. I was like, weirdly enough, this feels exactly what a lot of films about 9/11 were trying to talk about post 9/11. And he's in a way bringing it all back to how we're invading other countries, how our history is doomed to repeat itself from the beginning of time. And yet we do not fully look at the devastation, the damage, and the psychological toll that it leads not just on the characters in this movie, but generationally. And I found that to be quite moving and quite disturbing, that this movie is an extremely cynical movie, and it has to be. And
it is and it isn't.
Well, I think it is, and I think it's also extremely beautiful. And two things can exist in once. It can be cynical in how all these events unfold, and then it can also be reflective in that is a movie also about, within a love story, about regrets. And then how he goes off after all this sacrifice, the love that they have, and everything between John Smith and Pocahontas, which obviously is historically inaccurate, and it's heightened just for this film. And a lot of historians have gone on and said like that's not how it actually happened, or it never happened at all, and whatever. Just for the story of this, for the film. Yeah, I agree. But it is interesting is that at the end of it, instead of him choosing the love he has for her, like she is willing to give up everything for him, he's not willing to do that. And yes, he is regretful, but then it puts them down these two paths. And we primarily see her path in the second half of the film. And he's pretty much out of the picture until the end. And I think that is then a fascinating, Jay, you talked about like her discovery of herself and her new world and the discovery of, the connection with her mother. I think that it is also, yes, literally then she goes to a new world, he's coming to her world, and that these two worlds colliding. But it is also love is something new for her that she's never experienced. And then honestly, when that love is damaged by him leaving, it's trying to pick up herself and reshape her heart. And it weirdly feels like Malick is kind of saying that she settles for John Rolfe, which I don't think that's really what it's trying to say. But I think it is about like, then how do you pick up and forge this life after you've lost everything?
Yeah, it's creation and apocalypse operating hand in hand. And if you ask me, the real new world is the birth of their child, which in a lot of ways is the first
when he's on the ship,
in a certain way.
When he's on the ship
of the
and
two
he's
cultures.
when he's in English clothes and he's the future, right? He's the bridge.
He feels like
he is always the hope, right? Because it's always the hope of
some sort of union of these two worlds.
What do we always say in history? The children are the future, right? And so they, when we make political or social decisions, it's always about what are the world we're going to leave behind for our children, right?
The ends of these two old worlds are kind of exemplified by the potential that lies within this new entity, almost again in 2001, like the Star Child in a certain way, which again I was thinking about a lot while watching this movie, actually. But I think it is so symbolic, and I think the mythology as history is one of the most potent ideas that this movie presents, and it goes hand in hand with the philosophy that it wears on its sleeve as well, and also the stuff that you can unpack after the eighth time watching this movie, like I have. It's just a good film. I think it's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
It's just pretty good, Karen.
So it's funny. The first time I saw it was in 2005 when it came out, and I'm a little bit older than you guys, so I was an adult and I went with a friend, and the whole time we were watching it, I was just so in awe. I was just completely just caught up in it. And
Karen, was that your first time seeing a Malick film?
It was,
okay, in the theaters. Okay,
yeah. And so the movie ends and we're walking out, and I turn to my friend. I'm like, "Wow, wasn't that just beautiful?" And she goes, "What are you talking about? What the hell was that?" She's like, "What did you make me watch?" And I was just so, what do you mean? It was
your friend
beautiful.
Is my wife, because when I told her I had to put this on, she was just like, "Well, you can go to the other room, and I'm going to watch something normal."
I had a similar experience where I put this on, and after about 12 minutes, my wife was like, "Is this from the Tree of Life guy?" And I was like, "Yes, it is."
And then she peaced out and went to the other room.
Left. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She went to go watch Selling Sunset.
Karen, did you have to like pay a toll with your friend? Did you have to like balance that out and doing something that they wanted to do that you usually like did they pay you back?
It was definitely a while before she trusted me again. That's for sure.
That's fair. No,
because I feel like restaurants, she didn't get to choose movies.
The thing was that
her taste was
I at least have an office, so I can go and watch my as my wife calls it, pretentious movies in the other room.
That's the nice thing about living alone. I can watch it on my big TV in my living room. Mm-hmm. No one can question me. But this was, we paid money to go to the theater, and she was not happy about that.
Probably like what, $9 to the cinema?
Oh gosh, back then it was probably like $5.
Yeah, the $5 matinee.
For sticking it out though.
Yeah, at least she stuck till the end. She didn't walk out. Like when I saw Tree of Life, and we'll talk about that more in depthly next week. People walked out of that movie. People walk out of his movies because they're like, because I just don't think that he's very challenging.
Yes.
And he's trying to provoke and challenge. He's a very, and yes, it can fall on pretentiousness, but it also can fall upon provocateur and
yes.
And wanting to have a different experience than what you normally get.
Yes. You also have to consider the fact that this was, it was a long time after his first film, but this is pretty early in the Malick filmography. And so I think when it came out, people really weren't sure how to market it. It's heavily sold at the time on the star power of Christian Bale and especially,
Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
This would have been right after Batman Begins? Was that 2004?
This is the same year.
Same year.
Yeah, this is right around the time. But, Colin Farrell was at his height of popularity at that time, and Christian Bale was too. And so it was really sold on, it's a Pocahontas story starring these two hunky guys, And
it's action packed. Because I remember the trailer being like,
which one is she going to pick?
Yeah, which one's she going to pick? Yeah, it's like, you might as well play the rom-com music. Like, like, she was just a girl from another world, and these two eligible bachelors walked into the woods. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And so it definitely, like, watching it, like, once the movie started, I do remember that feeling of like, okay, I have to recalibrate my brain because this is not what I thought I was here for. But I was able to do that and just go with what we had. My friend was not.
I don't, honestly, from when I was a kid and didn't appreciate this to now, I've seen all these movies, so I know what I'm expecting. But this is not the hardest one, I would say. And it's actually quite.
No, the hardest ones are the twirly swirly post true life movies.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And so, but then also I get what you're saying, Karen, because it's also like, am I getting Thin Red Line again? Am I getting the movie that's sold in a trailer? Like, I don't know how you market him at all. And also, you have to market it like that. It was released at Christmas time, and it's $30 million, and it looks it.
I thought it was more than that. I thought it was like 50.
No, it's like it's 30. I got 30. They made about 50. But
huge hit.
Huge hit. People have been talking about Tree of Life, New World for forever.
And the money it made was because of Colin Farrell and Christian Bale.
I mean, listen. I mean, if we want to talk about it,
certainly
right now,
not a word of mouth hit.
I mean, like, if you just had Colin Farrell like that on a poster, and I would have gone to the theater. I mean, he was, and he still is, an absolute hot, insanely sexy man. Like, there's no question about it.
He's looking great. This is maybe
is this peak? I was gonna say, is this peak? Because he goes from this and then he does Miami Vice.
I mean, Bullseye.
Yeah. Winter's Bone.
He should have been in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Oh yeah, you think he should have showed up?
Mm-hmm.
You think they could? I don't know. Well, he dies in the Daredevil movie, right?
I don't think I've ever.
Oh, but that doesn't matter, right? Because like they all get evaporated. Yeah,
could have been Bullseye from Universe 6617.
Are you just making up things now? Like,
no, I mean, there's got to be one called that, right?
I guess so. I don't know. I mean,
Tony Stark is dead.
Yeah. Oh God, don't get me started on that. See, I was okay. So I rewatched that. You did it, Karen. Congratulations. You're gonna get this.
No.
I watched this movie, and then shortly after that, news came through the wire from Comic-Con about Robert Downey Jr. And I immediately wanted to go back to the moments 5 minutes before when I was in pure bliss watching this movie, really hopeful about the state of cinema. And then reminded myself, oh yeah, it's 2024. There is no hope. So yeah.
To be clear, you liked Deadpool and Wolverine.
To be clear, I liked that movie. It does have problems.
Yeah,
you liked it too. It does have problems.
Super fun.
My thought about that movie is art is dying. Had a good time.
Yeah, exactly. Like I saw it again and I didn't mind seeing it again. Took a while. Honestly, watched it through her lens, kind of like I watched when I rewatched Barbie last year, and it was a blast because she had an absolutely great time, and it was probably my favorite experience this year at the cinema. Watching her reactions to things, just like with Barbie last year, was wonderful.
Okay, but what if? And I know they've already announced it, but what if Terrence Malick was directing Doomsday?
Well, I mean,
that'd be interesting. Remember when Thanos touched that wheat field? Very Malick.
Yeah, but then it would linger away from the hand, and it would be 45 minutes of the wheat field after that. And it would still be a top 10 movie of its year. Probably.
Well, they try to, speaking of, who loves this movie, speaking of Marvel, Chloe Zhao.
Oh, yeah?
She calls this movie pure cinema. Yeah, there's like a pretty lengthy interview where she talks about this movie a lot.
Michael LaSalle named it the best film of the decade.
Wow. I mean,
critic from San Francisco
fine.
Chronicle. Yeah. I mean, that's and then talked a lot about how cynical and visceral and yet while also being elegant that this movie is.
Well, I think I really do think, how do you take the last line of this movie where she's talking about how everybody must die, but the one thing that gives her peace is that her child survived. I think it is the most beautiful sentiment in history. Like, I think it is the most beautiful thing in the world. And it's also this idea of leaving this plane and going to something beyond. And also this is something that my wife and I have talked about, where just like the most unimaginable thing to us would be outliving our kid.
Yeah.
That to me is as great a tragedy as I can imagine. And so that hit particularly hard.
I think for her, especially in this movie, because I mean, the times were different than they are nowadays. I mean, obviously there's tragedy, but it was common because of sickness and illness and violence and the conditions of the world in which we live in, regardless of stature. And honestly,
also, all of her narration have been about discovering her. A lot of her narration has been about just like finding her mother again.
Yes.
And she's not looking. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It was, throughout the movie, we're hearing her basically talking to her mother almost in a prayer. And when she at a certain point, she says, "Mother, I found you." She's finding that connection to her mother. And it's, a lot of that has to do with motherhood on her own, of her own.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the end, it is this beautiful moment where she's been looking back for so long, and now she's looking forward. Even as she's passing on, she's looking forward to what will follow her. And it's really beautiful.
Damn.
Yeah. And the idea of did it get you right now?
These movies, man, I love that. I'm transcending talking about these movies.
I mean, it got me because when she looked at Bale, as I think John Smith is about to like reunite with her at the end and talk to him there in London. She goes, "You were like the man that essentially like that you promised to be." You know what I mean? And that promise not being broken like it was before with Smith is key. And that means that she made, again, the right choice to be with this man, to be able to take care of herself, also then to know that a child would be taken care of. And it's all about stability at that point. And it's no different, I think, like, as people were coming over here and looking for new opportunity and a place to grow and a place for them to have something that their own, but then also build something and have generational stability. I think that there is also that within her of understanding that, she's not with the quote unquote first love or love of her life, but she's with a good man and she is in a good situation and she's made the best of what she has left, and all that matters is her child in the end. It doesn't.
She loves his reliability.
Yes, and she loves that, the pomp and the circumstance and all that. It's not what matters.
It's a different kind of love.
Yeah, and it's actually quite beautiful.
When she says, "You are the man I thought you were," I love it.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful sentiment. I mean, there is still love there, but it's, again, like Jay, you just said, it's a different kind of love, and it's safer, but it's longer lasting, and then it then is transferred into this child, and that's why that shot when they're on the boat and he's running after their son, it feels as if that is reflective of her watching her life right there, and the excitement of those two being, together as they venture into this new life that they have, or the remaining parts of her life. And
doesn't she say, "You are the man I thought you were, and more"? Isn't that?
Yeah,
she says that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it even goes beyond.
It's a beautiful, beautiful, and you can just feel. And what I love about Bale's performance, there's that moment when he's holding her, and it is not really of lust, it is that of security, and you can feel at that moment all of the tragedy and how the camera lingers, and Malick just lingers on them, and it's unspoken, this bond that they have between the two of them, of that, it doesn't have to be said that he's going to take care of her, because she deserves to be taken care of, not because she's this, otherworldly figure. It's just because she's a good soul, and good people deserve to be treated with kindness. And it's I think the first time that she actually does see genuine kindness from someone that she is admired of obviously a different race, or a different even subset of human beings at this point. But also too, I gotta say, Farrell is incredible in this movie. This is one of his best performances.
Everybody's good. Who's bad? We haven't even gotten to the cast. Roster.
Plummer. I mean, I know Plummer's mad that he got like a lot of shit cut out, it seems like, but like, he's very good in this movie. And Wes Studi is incredible in this movie. I mean, this is the Terrence Malick of that. He hires great actors, and he
hires great actors, then edits around their performances and shoots a lot of birds.
Yeah, and it still works, and they're still great,
But I mean, go down the list here: Ben Mendelsohn, David Thewlis, Eddie Marsan is in this, right?
Yeah.
It's got just a ton of great character actors in it. Jonathan Pryce shows up at the end for
as the king. Yeah,
40
for like
seconds.
40 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. No, I like Thewlis a lot in this movie. I like that.
I like Marsan. Marsan when he's going like full heel while Farrell's getting whipped, hung upside down. That's an incredible scene from him. He can do just snivelly evil as good as anybody.
I do love that this movie does a really great job, though, of depicting that this was, it doesn't romanticize the history, I think, of the birth of this settlement and the birth of this new world being created. And that when Smith does finally return after spending his time with Pocahontas and her people, that there is still right back in it. He's not even back 5 minutes, and there's this, power dynamic, and there's this, dick measuring contest, and it's all about, you betrayed us, and there was a trial and you weren't here, and it's all these made up rules, and he has to sadly abandon any sense of peace between the two tribes in order to build back any sense of stability within what is essentially a group of wanderless, ghostly, like it feels like a ghost town. It feels like a graveyard that is led by
it's so bleak.
It's so bleak that didn't even know that there was going to then be the potential of life in there, and that, you know, is in large part because of him, but then also it is in large part because of Pocahontas as well too, and her general, again, that scene where she brings them the supplies. It's the right thing. It's the right thing in her heart that she feels, but then it also then leads to even more of a divide, weirdly enough. And
I really love the visualization where he has just been in this beautiful place with these beautiful people. And then, as you mentioned, he comes back to this settlement that is bleak. It's muddy. It's gross. Everyone's just kind of wandering around looking just dead in the eyes and miserable. And yet they are the ones that think that they're so
advanced.
Yeah. And yet they have just kind of destroyed this piece of land that they're on and just stripped every bit of beauty away from it. And
from surrounding area, right? Because it's just like, it feels just like a mud pit.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just such a good visualization of that, and such a like in a way, like just a cautionary tale, I guess, for us to really be mindful and be aware of just how easy it is for us to destroy in what we think is progress, or what we think is, you know, for the greater good, or whatever excuses we want to give to it. But to just really to just be so aware of how easy we can just gut this natural world and just rob it of all the wonderful things that it can give us.
Yeah, I mean, it feels as if it's a perfect commentary on the idea of, I mean, of an old West sort of mentality of shoot first and ask questions later. Literally rip up this land, make this whole thing, set up these, you know, chop down all these trees and set up these crops and everything. And yet there's also, with no structure and stability or culture or anything or any ownership.
Right. But that's also what we see now.
No, I know.
You know,
I mean,
big business, big corporations just do that. They'll go into places and just take everything.
I mean, if that's not the idea of a suburb, I don't know what isn't. I mean, the idea of that, it's, you know, in order to then create all these homes and everything, the natural world has to be destroyed. The trees, the plants, the animals, everything has to be torn down.
Yes, it goes beyond that though too. Like when a few years ago, I did some volunteer work down in Honduras, and I was staying in this town, this little town on the coast of the Caribbean. And everybody, like, they could not use the water there. They had to get their water trucked in. And, you know, I just assumed, oh, it's just because everything is so polluted. And that is part of it. But for this particular part of the country, the bigger issue was that Pepsi had come in and they had set up a huge bottling plant and had diverted most of the resources. So people didn't have access to clean water unless they bought it. And so it's not even just about housing or, you know, agriculture. It's about corporations really literally robbing and stripping the land of resources for just business and things that we don't actually need.
And knowing that they're doing that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have brought in Aaron Brockovich to resolve that, or maybe whatever Mark Ruffalo's name was in Dark Waters. I want to talk about Lubezki's cinematography a little bit, because as great as the production design is from Jack Fisk, I think one of the visual motifs that Lubezki and Malick bring to the table is there's a lot of low angle shots. And I think that accomplishes a couple things. One, when you're in the more natural world, it does give this sense of something holy and divine as you're looking at this sky. And then when you talk about the fort itself, the fort is more vertical than anything that they've experienced before. And so it kind of hides the sky, right? And it is very representative of rejecting this more natural world, this more holy experience. And then this really comes to a head at the end of the film when And this is again kind of speaking to that title, The New World, where Pocahontas goes to England, and she is in a lot of ways in awe of what she is seeing, even though the city of London is really defying the natural world. It needs to destroy nature to build up this immaculate city, but a lot of the things in the city are beautiful. You have these stained glass depictions of Christianity and these huge stone buildings that are very impressive and unlike anything she's ever seen before. And it does feel, I don't know if you could call it the corruption of Pocahontas or perhaps the potential for combination of these two cultures. But I think that idea is driven home first and foremost by Lubezki's cinematography. And the other part that I think is so special from Lubezki is the battle sequence, which you totally see why Inarritu wanted him for The Revenant when you watch that, right? It's very reminiscent of that. There's a lot of long takes. It's very visceral, violent, impactful without being too long or too indulgent. And Malick, as antithetical as a lot of his movies are to ideas of warfare is at the center of so many of his movies. And this is just another example of that, at least until he gets to, eventually it's about music festivals in Austin. But, a little of this, a little of that.
There's nothing wrong with music festivals in Austin. Jerk.
No, look, we're going to get there, and I'm going to explain why those movies are awesome.
Do you know that
they're very different?
You do know that I'm a part of some of that movie, correct?
No, but we'll
talk about it. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
You were originally cast in the Michael Fassbender role,
correct?
And you got edited out. It was a kind of an Adrian Brody situation.
Yeah, I was from what Terry described, I was too good. Let's just say that.
That's exactly right. But Lubezki is as much a part of the transformation of Terrence Malick as Malick himself, where he brings an entirely new visual sensibility. He brings a new language to the films of Terrence Malick. And this is Malick trying to play with the form of filmmaking in ways that he hadn't before, or at least hadn't to this degree. But now he is really trying to challenge what movies can be. And I understand why people would be like, no, thank you. Haven't seen anything like that before. It's making me feel weird things that I don't really want to deal with. And I think those things are largely in the subconscious, and they come from those images that evoke certain emotions, like you were saying earlier, Karen, that are hard to address and hard to battle with inside yourself. And also just looking at it historically, I've been taught my whole life that Europeans came over and made America better, right? And that's just what I was taught in school. And then eventually you kind of learn that maybe history is, like I said earlier, written by the quote unquote victors.
You mean wrong?
Yeah. I mean, certainly to a large extent. I mean, it is mythological. And that is what Terrence Malick is addressing in this movie. The John Smith Pocahontas thing is almost completely fabricated. The Rolfe marriage is very much true, but it was a marriage of practicality. However, at a certain point, when all people hear is the mythology, that becomes the history. That is the world that this movie exists in.
The Liberty Balance complex.
Exactly. Yeah. And the history is forgotten and the myth lives on forever. And that, I think, is something that the film is addressing as well. And yeah, I don't know.
No, I think
you got another like 3 hours. Like, keep going.
Carrie, do you have anything?
I'm just so, mesmerized by everything that I just heard.
Yeah. Jay's put in the work.
He really has. He's putting me to shame big time.
But no, I mean, I agree with you, Jay. I mean, like that is the interesting thing about rewatching this movie and seeing, movies to, a similar extent over the last couple of years that have definitely taken a look at history in such and like I thought of a lot, not just because of the Native American representation of this, but of also just because of the lostness and stolenness. Well, I was no, I did not think of Avatar. I was thinking a lot of Killers of the Flower Moon. I was thinking a lot about that movie last year and how
that's playing with form, and expectation in the same way that this movie is.
Yes, exactly. And I think of also then, looking at this film through Pocahontas' lens, in her eyes and her perspective. Literally, she is the narrator, just as Molly Burkhart is the narrator. They're both the hearts of their films, and deeply around them is this cascading body count of blood for resources and for land and for the white man's opportunity. And at the core of it is their history being lost in the books that we read. And it takes generation after generation after generation to get it back. And they are not the only. And this is again, it is throughout history. It's not just what's happened here on this continent. It is what has happened throughout the world. And you're right, Jay. Malick, I think, is talking about how we look and perceive history, and then also it's how do you want your movie to be presented to you? Do you want a sweeping love story? Do you want a war film? Do you want to turn your brain off when it comes to those things? Well, I'm not going to present that to you, but I'm going to kind of at times turn the mirror, I think, at the audience and say, you're usually used to this. I think actually the marketing campaign is kind of brilliant in that it's a movie that's pushed through to get people in the audience with a love story and action and, Colin Farrell, throwing his sword and knives and blood and everything. And then you watch the film and it's completely the backdrop.
The love story is there.
It is there, but it's not, but there's consequences to it. There's heartbreak to it. It's
not
also this idea not a romance, it's a tragedy.
All of those things exist simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
It's not, you cannot boil a Terrence Malick thing down to
a girl meets a boy and they fall in love.
Even beyond that, you can't boil this movie down to it's a movie about the destruction of Native Americans. It's again about so much more than that. It's about the idea of love. It's about the idea of worldliness. It's about capitalism and how capitalism drives violence and destruction. And it is about this idea that through it all, love perseveres, and through love, you can create new realms of existence through the creation of new life.
And the possibility of hope
breeds this divine state of existence that is indescribable in any physical realm. And it's something you can't really experience until you experience it. And it's deep and emotional and it makes me cry.
So when you asked me a minute ago, Ryan, if I had any thoughts, I did, but I wasn't joking. Listening to what Jay had been talking about, I was like, I really did need a minute to collect my own thoughts because
it's okay.
Because you have put a lot of work into this, Jay, and you've shared some very insightful things, and I think one of the points, and you've touched on this as well, but again, sorry to bring it back around to this or bring this up again, but this is 10 years after the Disney animated movie, where when that came out, there was a flood of stories and articles and essays and things about all the problems with that movie and historical inaccuracies of it. And rightly so. I'm not saying that was a bad thing. But Malick could have approached this film as an opportunity to correct the narrative and say, oh, I'm going to tell the true story about Pocahontas. Instead, he chose to focus on the mythology and to tell this story with these very important themes about colonization and about the blending and the crashing together of different cultures and societies and about love and about nature and about our relationship with all of it. And he decides to use the myth that we already know is a myth and is not true. That's a very intentional choice that I think works really well to bring all these themes together in a way that that it's basically it's not an allegory, but it's like a parable. It's teaching us a lot of very important lessons and reminding us of our values through a story that we inherently go into it knowing is not accurate, and that it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. J-Dog.
I don't know, man. You know what's cool about this movie? And maybe for some people, they might not dig this, but there's a lot of parallels to the Tree of Life in images and music for sure. There's a lot of music that Malick will use again in the Tree of Life. But just thinking about the images, there's the baby's hand in Pocahontas's hand right after it's born, which is very reminiscent of the foot in the hand in the Tree of Life. I really did just find myself thinking as this movie continued to ramp up and was becoming this more expressionistic depiction of existence, it really did feel like a baton passing to what would become his most expressionistic, transcendental film, which would not only heighten the style of this film, but also heighten the ideas of this movie and I don't want to spoil a lot about my thoughts on the Tree of Life, but
no, you need to save those. That's the next
we
show.
will save that. That is going to be a 4.5-hour podcast.
Good Lord.
But it is there is a lot of mirroring in that. Yeah, it's going to be 4.5 hours, and that's before you guys even get to start talking.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
But it is just a film that exists in moments, and these moments that you otherwise might find completely inconsequential have such an impact in this movie because they're not just about the moments in the world, they're about the implications of those moments on a cosmic level. And that rings true in large swaths of this movie. I just think this goes so far above and beyond the art that we are accustomed to, and it's just Malick putting his stamp on the form and challenging what film can be. And this is the first step in him really experimenting with that. And then you could argue he takes his ideas to the next level with his next film and then kind of makes his ultimate statement and then takes a step back and is like, I'm going to completely upend what you think a movie is. But this is the start of that, and it's an important start and a great film.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film. And Karen, everything you said there, to your points, I think is absolutely true. Though I do also think that it by Disney sort of, marketing and branding and picking this story as one of their films to sell and to children bleeds back into the capitalistic tendencies that Malick is talking about here, and the opportunities that arise from the greedy and not understanding the empathy and the sensitivity of the world in which they inhabited. And so I think that it's again, it's super cautionary. I know I sound very ho-hum about it, but it's quite profound in a lot of ways. And it's very weirdly enough, even though, yes, it's like built off of a 300-page script and it's got 4 editors and all this stuff. He found it it's one of the, where you hear the phrase, you find it in the editing room. He found it and he put it together. So it is this mad genius. He's got it all he's got a million things dancing in his head, and he's just able to put it together to an effective fashion. We'll talk about the other times when he doesn't, but sorry, Karen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's something a little bit Monet or Van Gogh about it. Yeah. Because I think that he goes into it knowing what he wants. Nobody else does. And when you look at it up close, it's like, what is this? This is kind of a mess. But when you step back and you see the completed work, it's a masterpiece.
There's no way to be like in the process of it. If you're talking to everyone working on this, everyone's probably answer is, I have no fucking clue what this movie is going to be.
Oh yeah,
And then
from the actors who were just like, dude, what are you talking? You want me to
am I even
stand
going to be in
still
this?
for 3 minutes in a
Like,
field of grass?
I said this on last episode. How did any actor ever want to work with him ever again after just being, and he does this after just being cut? Like, how do people want to work with him? But it's because, I mean, then you watch the movies, you're like, well, I mean, I may not be in this, but this movie kind of rules. So it's like, damn it, it's a coin flip if you're going to show up to the premiere and not even be in the
I
movie.
mean, he gets people to work with him.
But yeah,
how many actors has he had multiple times?
Bale.
Yeah, that's the only one I could think of.
well, I mean, Penn was kind of
Yeah.
cut for Tree of Life until I mean, just
Penn was in multiple.
Yeah.
He was supposed to make another movie with Nick Nolte, I think, and that fell through.
There's some. I feel like when you do the research, we'll be able to give Karen a better answer for that because I feel like in those later films, the more I feel like Night of Cups, he cut somebody. There's got to be like one a movie nowadays. It feels like, but I mean, there's probably like half of Hollywood that got cut out of the Jesus movie that he won't stop editing. So I mean, we're gonna realize that it's actually not a movie about Jesus at all, or what, and it's about a turtle
named Jesus.
Yeah, it's about a turtle in a forest or something. Do you guys have anything else you want to add about Tree of Life before we wrap it up?
It's beautiful.
No, Tree of Life, the New World. Sorry, Jay's talking about Tree of Life, and it's got me home.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't know. It's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so beautiful, and it makes me.
Karen, do you have a favorite image?
So much.
Do you have a favorite image in the film?
I know it's kind of silly, but not silly, but it's initially when Pocahontas is walking through the grass and she's touching the grass and John is following her. I love that shot so much.
Yeah. Jay?
I don't know. I mean, I remember, honestly, I just remember like images of a running river. There's a great shot, which is kind of more of a painterly shot where they discover kind of the great big oysters, or whatever they are.
Yeah.
That I think is really fantastic. The final shot, the upward shot of the trees, I think is awesome. And that's one thing I actually posted on Twitter. It got, hold on, let me check, 0 likes. But I posted about how really I think this film is so representative of how film is the ultimate intersection of all artistic mediums, because Lubezki, he shot The Revenant and he shot this. And there's a shot in The Revenant that is very similar. And there's actually several shots that are very similar to that upward shot of the trees at the end of the film, which in this instance is all about kind of our spiritual transcendental relationship with nature and a representation of that relationship extending up to the heavens. And in The Revenant, it's like, here's a pretty shot of trees. And it's supposed to represent some sort of, inner conflict or whatever it's trying to do. I don't know. Inarritu is no Malick, in my opinion, as hard as he tries to be. But you just think about how that all requires a combination of writing, sound, visuals, and just this culmination of all these different things that create a film that are elements that on their own exist as art forms in and of themselves, but when it comes to this film, it so embodies and takes advantage of all of those mediums individually to create this culmination of wonder and emotion and awesomeness, and it rules.
I think my favorite shot in the film is actually in the beginning and then in the middle of the second act, and it's the boats on the water. And I think because that means danger, that means peace, that means so many, it means the obviously all the events lead up to this vessel with our characters on it. it's an endless possibility, and its conclusion leads to the destinies that both of these two characters find. So,
but also the one of my favorite images is the Native American running through the door in England, which again is that expressionistic flourish that we get at the end of the film. And there's also that great shot where Pocahontas is like reaching up to the sky and the sun is in her hands. That is awesome as well. And actually, in the extended cut, there's a really awesome sequence very early in the movie where they're in water. And I think that is something that I wish was in the original cut. And I really need to watch the extended cut again because it's so the idea of an extended cut for Malick is so interesting because
how much longer is it?
It's like I think it's like 45 minutes longer.
Wow. It's like a Lord of the Rings movie.
But Malick movies are so much about how you feel in the moment, to the point where you think back on it in its entirety and you can remember it, but the impression that it leaves on you is not about, this was a 3-hour movie. And if it needs to be 3 hours, it needs to be 3 hours. And obviously The Thin Red Line is 3 hours. That's a more straightforward film. This movie is so much about this collection of images and feelings, and a spiritual experience that almost feels like time doesn't even exist while you're watching it. And so the idea of an extended cut is really interesting from his perspective, because I do feel like his films, even if they're not exactly what he wanted them to be while he was editing, they feel like objects that almost shouldn't be touched in some ways. But I know that's a silly thing to think, and I'm being a silly little goober right now. But I don't know. I like his movies. That's
No,
all
I think that it's like when we hear about, like, this is a good example. When you hear about Ridley Scott and you watch his theatrical cuts, and then you hear like there's like a 9-hour cut of Napoleon or whatever, and you're like, well, the 2.5-hour one wasn't very good. So I guess the longer one hopefully will be better. With Malick, when you watch these movies, depending on the film and your varying opinions on them, I don't necessarily know if additional material is necessary. I haven't seen the extended edition or the final cut or the other two cuts of this. And I'm almost kind of scared to, because like this is pretty damn good just as it is. But
it's still awesome. I mean, it's still spectacular. But again,
I don't need to know. I don't know kind of what would elevate it. You know what I mean?
Because they are so artistic, it's hard to, in my mind, differentiate between the two. They do expand on a few story points a little bit more, but it's also a lot of shots of birds and grass and stuff.
Do they show more oysters? Because the oysters in this movie, man,
they do look very good. I just want to read the last line one more time.
Okay, that's fine.
He gently reminded me that all must die. 'Tis enough, she said, that our child, you, should live. I mean, that's as good as it gets right there. It doesn't get better than that.
It's pretty good.
It doesn't get better.
Jay?
Yeah.
Collect your thoughts.
I'm exhausted.
I know. We're going to test your award season knowledge now, based on the film we just reviewed, The New World, in a segment we like to call It's an Honor to Get Nominated. Jay, Malick.
Yeah.
Coming off Thin Red Line.
Yeah.
Coming off of Days of Heaven. Did he return?
Yeah, 35 years ago.
35 years ago. Yeah. Did The New World get nominated for any Oscars? Karen, don't help him because I know you know this.
I'm going to assume it did. Surely it got a cinematography.
That's correct.
What else? Editing?
No.
That's silly.
Every
Malick movie should get nominated for editing.
Yeah, because it exists.
Oh, production design.
No.
Are you kidding me?
Jay.
Was that its only nomination?
Cinematography was it.
That's silly.
It was it is wild that is the only. You want me to read you the editing nominations?
I would love you to read me those so I can get mad.
So the winner was Crash.
I mean, what a well-edited movie.
The other
I mean, it is very edited. It's most edited movie.
Yeah, that's where the definition most edited comes in. The other nominees were Cinderella Man, The Constant Gardener, Munich, and Walk the Line. Walk the Line, another most edited movie of all time.
Can I just say, I think Munich is maybe the most underrated Spielberg.
Yep.
I think that movie is incredible.
I rewatched that like about a month and a half ago.
I haven't watched it again in a long time.
It's a hard watch to get through for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a good damn movie.
I think it's top 5 Spieley.
Top 10. I wouldn't.
How you like that? Top 5 Spieley.
I wouldn't put it in my 5, but it's definitely secured in my 10.
What was nominated for pick?
Oh, you want to know?
Crash,
Well, Crash.
Brokeback Mountain, Capote. Was Capote in?
Yep.
Walk the Line?
Nope.
No, it wasn't.
Munich.
Oh shoot. Good Night and Good Luck and Munich.
Yeah. It's a mostly good lineup and an abysmal winner.
When was the last time you saw Crash?
Me?
Anyone?
2005.
Never rewatched it?
I never did.
I think I saw it back in like
it's part of me
2012 when I was in college.
At the time, I liked it, but
it was Ebert's favorite movie of the year.
Yeah, and I thought it was good. I'm also a white girl from LA, so but I've never had an issue, or I've never had an urge to rewatch it. And also, even though I liked it, that wasn't the movie I thought should have won that year. But
Karen, do you think we should rewatch it and review it together one day when we do the Paul Haggis series? Yeah. Karen's face was like, Ryan, that's a terrible suggestion. What else
did he direct?
In the Valley of Ella, right? He did that. What did Haggis do? Haggis did.
He did that. The next 3 days. Oh my god, this is like bad.
It's bad. In the Valley of Ella is actually a pretty good movie. I don't. It's Tommy Lee Jones is very good in that movie. It's him and Charlize Theron and Susan Sarandon. And Mark Bowl. It's based off his story, like a story that he had. So it's a pretty interesting procedural. It's by far his best movie. But yeah, he was riding high with Crash off of his $1 Million Baby screenplay, and
let's not talk about that.
You don't like $1 Million Baby?
I hate $1 Million Baby.
No, I like that movie.
I like that movie. It's pretty good. It's pretty good, Clint. It's not my favorite Clint, but
I hate it.
I like Unforgiven and Bridges of Madison County more than that.
Man, I forgot that Munich and War of the Worlds came out in the same year.
Yeah, it was one of those.
Billy likes to do that every now and then.
Yeah, didn't he do? Yeah,
Jurassic Park and Schindler's List.
The Ready Player One in the Post, right?
That sounds right.
Sounds about right.
Only one of those is good.
The Post.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I was. Well, only
for some reason, I own Ready Player One.
Karen's gonna hate me saying this, but only one of these movies from this year from Spielberg is good, and it's Munich.
War of the Worlds is pretty good.
Tom's not the problem with that.
Underrated.
You're one of the War of the Worlds underrated. Well, I mean,
yeah.
The Sun arc in that, and also the Sun performance is abysmal. But
I agree. I totally
not a fan
agree.
of the Fanning screaming a lot in that movie either.
She's 9 years old and there are aliens.
She's more subtle in Man on Fire. Come on. She doesn't have to scream the whole time.
There aren't aliens in Man on Fire.
No, but she does get kidnapped. So
right, but not
she's
by
more
aliens.
greatly affected. No, but she's kidnapped, Karen. It's apples and oranges, I guess.
She gets kidnapped in War of the Worlds by the aliens.
That's fair.
Ryan, how do you think Creasy would have dealt with the War of the Worlds?
He would have killed every alien alive. Honestly, why haven't we seen? Has Denzel made a sci-fi movie? Like a straight
Virtuosity?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's fair. That's true. Him and Crow, right? And then they reunited for American
that movie
Gangster.
Is wild and fun.
I also saw that one in the theater.
That was in his wild era, Denzel, because he had like that and around the same time as Ricochet.
Mm-hmm.
Ricochet just absolutely rocks the house.
An absolutely just vicious movie.
John Lithgow just going wild.
There is a scene in that movie where they have a like American Gladiator fight with
that is true.
A bunch of neo-Nazis and John Lithgow is a murderer.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense to the plot.
It's a prison fight, right?
It's a prison fight, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense. And it's also not the craziest thing that happens in that movie.
That movie rules so hard.
It's on HBO Max if you guys want to rewatch it out there. Yeah, I would totally nominate the New World in every category that Crash is nominated in. I would take it out of picture, and I'd take it out of director, and heck, I even take it out of screenplay. Well, it wouldn't be original. I guess it would be adapted, right? Would it be adapted?
What, the New World?
Yeah.
Based
on existing characters or historical.
But when it's a historical figure, it's not adapted.
I guess it would be original. Well, we can take Crash out. But I wouldn't even give Brokeback the best picture win out of these 5.
If you include this movie, or
if I include the New World, I would give that picture, obviously. But if I'm just looking at the 5 the way it is now, I would give best picture to Good Night and Good Luck.
You said Munich was nominated, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going.
Did you give it Munich?
Munich would have been my choice that year.
Have you guys seen Good Night and Good Luck recently? I watched that like 2 months ago.
I haven't seen that since 2005.
That movie is the anomaly in George Clooney's directorial career because it is wonderful.
And I remember how much I loved it. I
love that movie so much.
Revisited.
And then
he's got that new movie coming out.
Which one?
Wolves. Is that what it's called?
Did he direct that?
No, I don't think so. John Watts.
I think that was Malick.
John Watts, baby.
Oh yeah,
Jay's favorite director.
I love John Watts.
We should do a John Watts series after Malick because talk about the most visually beautiful, stylistic director and the most bland man behind the camera in Hollywood currently.
Well, I mean, I remember watching Cop Car, and I don't think it's a very good movie, but I was like, okay.
And then
bring it on. Let's see what else you got.
And then Marvel.
Yeah.
So, but I heard that Wolves has 2 Michael Claytons in it.
No, Ryan, it's not Wolves, it's Wolves.
Well, it should be Wolves because Wolves is a stupid name for a movie.
Maybe it makes sense in context.
I think it's like, isn't it based on the wolf in Pulp Fiction?
I think so.
Mm-hmm. I think you're. Oh, like that's like the job that they do essentially. Like
that's like their.
Oh God!
Profession. Yeah.
That actually just makes me sick thinking that this is like anywhere near adjacent to that movie. That movie's going to be bad, guys. I'm just going to put it out there. The trailer did not look good.
I haven't seen the trailer.
You didn't see the trailer?
I've been really trailer unaware.
Yeah. Recently. I'm not looking forward to that. The production design nomination for this movie that didn't happen
that's silly.
That is absolutely ridiculous.
Fisk the award for that category should be
the Jack Fisk. You know he doesn't have one, right?
He should be the Oscar guy.
You know he doesn't have one?
I know.
Why doesn't he have an honorary at this point?
I don't know.
Because the Academy's dumb.
Didn't he slap that guy on stage one time?
Oh my God. No, Jay, that was Will Smith.
Oh, sorry.
Not
I got
Jack
Smith
Fisk.
And Fisk.
Yeah, you got it a little mixed up there, buddy. Art direction, I guess, is what the
man. I can flip a switch to stupid so fast. It's really incredible.
Could. You were doing so well again.
I'm sorry. Well, maybe you're welcome.
Memoirs of a Geisha, Good Night and Good Luck, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, King Kong, and Pride and Prejudice. This is the year Pride and Prejudice. I love Pride and Prejudice from Joe Wright.
Love Pride and Prejudice.
Oh no, Karen doesn't like it.
I love the Colin Firth and Jennifer Ely one.
Oh, okay. The miniseries.
Yeah, the good version.
So that joke in Barbie really hit home. Then.
Oh yeah.
Would you? The winner for cinematography was Memoirs of a Geisha. It was the Batman Begins, Brokeback Mountain.
Batman Begins was nominated for cinematography.
Wally Pfister, yeah. Brokeback Mountain, Good Night and Good Luck in the New World. It's not a bad lineup, but I wouldn't give my worst Vacation that win. Probably give it to Pareto for Brokeback Mountain. That movie's beautiful. Or this one. Lubezki's got like what, 9 Oscars?
Give him another one.
I feel like he's one of those. Yeah, give him another one. Why not? Karen, do you have a favorite film from this year, Karen?
From 2005?
Yeah.
Gosh. Trying to remember what else came out that year.
Ryan, you know what my favorite movie of 2005 is?
Is it The New World?
It is.
Okay.
I mean, that's definitely up there.
It's mine. It's either The New World or Good Night and Good Luck. I can't decide. And I will.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what else I saw there.
What else was there? Revenge of the Sith, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Madagascar,
Junebug,
Chicken Little,
History of Violence.
Brick is another one I love.
History of Violence is great.
Brokeback Mountain.
Brokeback Mountain's classic. Just got the 4K of that. Can't wait to crack that open.
Nice.
Grizzly Man. Love Grizzly Man.
Grizzly Man's good.
Nanny McPhee. Herbie Fully Loaded.
Okay, now I knew you're.
I really loved Capote too.
I do love Capote. Bennett Miller, Where Are You?
I heard he's making another
Elizabeth
movie.
Is he making another one?
That's what I heard.
God. Elizabethtown, interesting film.
Remember that one?
Yeah. How's Moving Castle?
Saw that one on a date.
Did you?
Yeah.
How'd that date go?
Not great, Bob.
This was the year Martin McDonough won for a live action short for a 6-shooter.
Then he would go on to work with a gentleman by the name of Colin Farrell.
Exactly. A couple of times, actually. 3 times.
Yeah. Because he was in 7 Psychopaths.
In Bruges, 7 Psychopaths, and Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah.
Which I like 2 out of those 3 movies.
I need to rewatch 7 Psychopaths.
That's the one I'm kind of mixed on.
Well,
Banshees.
I've never watched it all the way through.
Banshees of Inisherin. What a movie, though.
Yeah,
I think about that movie a lot. Especially as we get closer and closer to a political season. I think about that movie way too much because it's just about a movie about people not getting along. Hustle and Flow. This is Terrence Howard before the new math.
This is when the pod gets really good, when we just start reading off names of movies.
No context, no discussion, just
no, it's just talking about the year. It's an interesting year. So, nice. Karen, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work on the internet? And as you know, we like to give a recommendation for all of our listeners out there of a movie. It doesn't have to be a new movie. It can be something old that you want to give as a recommendation for the listeners to go and watch this week.
Ooh. Okay. Well, you can find me on basically all the social medias at Karen M. Peterson. I spend my most of my time though on Letterboxd and Instagram, so that's the best way to connect with me. And you can find my written work at almost totally said the wrong name. Website.
AwardsWatch.
Yes, that's where I'm at now.
Yeah.
There have been a few. Okay.
That's okay.
But I also have a couple of other podcasts. I have The Watch and Talk and Citizen Dame. So those are where you can find me. A movie to watch. I think given the political climate that we're in, one that I just recently rewatched that I'm sure you have talked about a lot. You probably did an episode on it, and that is Nashville from Robert Altman. I think it's an interesting film that gets into the heart of kind of where we're at today. What
a thorny movie too. I love that movie.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I think it's no, it's not currently on Criterion, but yeah, just take it, in the climate that we're currently in, just taking these intersecting storylines of a bunch of different people, most, singers and people wanting to get into that business and things, and converging on Nashville, but set to a very political story with this overtone of this guy that's sort of running on this don't vote for anybody sort of platform, which
Robert
I think
Altman
speaks,
ethos.
Yeah, which I think speaks to how a lot of us definitely were feeling. I think some people have, found some new energy, but yeah, it's very timely.
I love that movie. It's one of Altman's best. Top 5 Altman for me. Jay, is that in your top 5?
Yeah, it is. Okay. It's a great film, and Altman's one of my faves.
I mean, if you say it's your favorite, I'm not going to begrudge you.
No, not at all. You know what? Embarrassingly, not following Karen on Letterboxd. I'm ending that right now.
Was I following you? I feel like I was.
It doesn't look like it.
Ooh, well,
what?
I follow you both, so I'm not in the doghouse. Jay, same drill, buddy.
So, as I mentioned on the last, or a couple episodes ago, I guess, we have been on a quest to watch the Godfather trilogy. So I watched a film called The Godfather Part 2, which I highly recommend.
To be clear, Karen, Jay's wife has not seen any of the Godfather films.
So we've been going through them.
So they've been going through them.
I'll tell you this, though. I think for the first time, I am 1 is better than 2.
Thank you. I've been trying.
Absolutely, it is.
I have been trying to get you on this side of history for 6 goddamn years, and it took you now to finally do this.
Why do you hear my secret shame?
Oh no,
I haven't seen 3. If that's what you're gonna say.
Well, I've seen bits and pieces. I think I've seen the whole movie, but not all in one sitting.
I've never seen a.
Do you not like 2? Is that what you're gonna say?
Didn't see The Godfather until about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
It was one of those movies where I knew I needed to see it. And I just never got around to it. I just kept not watching it. But you couldn't just have not seen The Godfather. So I always pretended I had seen it, even though I never had. And then Fathom Events was doing a big screen showing of it. And I was like, that seems like the right way to watch it for the first time. So I finally did.
And maybe Ken sat you down and explained it to you.
I took my mom. I was like, let's go watch The Godfather. So.
Jay, I guess you are right. Maybe it is, maybe it is a movie that I guess is niche or becoming niche. I don't
think it's that. Old. I mean, I'm older than you guys are. It's not that.
I'm not saying you, Karen.
I mean, this seems kind of weird to say maybe, but I think it's kind of just a guy movie. It shouldn't be. It's a fantastic film. It's really, really great.
It's labeled like that, right?
I think that, growing up, that was just like, I wasn't necessarily that interested in it because that was a guy movie.
It's like a father-son storyline, big time. I get it.
So I think a lot of girls didn't see it at the time the guys did. So
it's like, it's one of the dorm room poster movies.
That's part of why I didn't really care if I saw it.
It was like that.
The Godfather, Scarface, Big Lebowski,
Pulp Fiction, Goodfellas.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. It's like the starting lineup of dude movies, and let me explain cinema to you. Yeah, big time.
Other than Pulp Fiction, those were all movies that I avoided for a really long time, and saw way later than I necessarily should have. So
yeah.
No, it's okay. Something a little more interesting that isn't The Godfather, which,
by the way, you also never said where we can find you on social media.
Oh yeah, Jay Ledbetter on Letterboxd, at Mr. Jay Ledbetter on Twitter, whatever. There's this short film that just came out. Ryan, you and I have a weird relationship with the actor-director Jim Cummings.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, because we really liked.
I really love Thunder Road. I think it's one of
Thunder
the
Road I thought was really good, and I really did not like The Wolf of Snow Hollow.
Yeah, I didn't like those subsequent films, and he let us know about it. I think on Line one point or something.
But you and me specifically?
Yeah, I think he listened, or someone told him that the Wolf Hollow episode we didn't like it, and he got kind of upset about it or whatever.
Wow.
Oh, he also just likes to follow and unfollow.
He's very
people.
online.
Yeah,
he's
very
too
online.
He's Jim,
too
get offline.
I met him in person though. He's a very nice guy.
No, he seems like a nice guy. But he made this short film called "Is Now a Good Time." It's
like the Marvel thing, right?
Yeah, it's about this guy who goes and gives a dying child the opportunity to watch a Marvel movie that hasn't come out yet, and it's funny, dark. I enjoyed it more than anything he's made in a while. It's pretty wild and darkly funny in that same way that Thunder Road was. So he's kind of going back to those roots a little bit. So check that out. It's like 12 minutes long.
Go watch this movie that he starred in. I forgot what the title of it
was.
Oh,
the one that takes place in like a diner.
Yeah, I watched that, and that was pretty good. But
yeah,
I can't
watch that.
It's a long, elaborate title. But I remember watching it. I was like, man, this is a pretty effective, like, contained little thriller here.
The Last Stop in Yuma County.
There you go.
That the one?
Yeah.
That was the other movie you made, The Beta Test. I did not like that movie.
The Beta Test.
That was bad.
Karen, any thoughts on
Jim? If you're listening, come on the pod.
Come on the pod. We'll talk to you about cinema.
Pod.
You want to talk about Malick?
Talk about Night of Cups.
I have no opinions of Jim Cummings.
Okay. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, or McQuade77. You can find all my work here at awardswatch.com. If you like podcasts, you can listen to the main show, which releases every Monday because this releases every Thursday. iTunes, Spotify, 5-star reviews. We greatly appreciate it. While you're over on the website, please sign up for the newsletter. Got a lot of stuff coming your way over the next couple months with film festivals and interviews and news and reviews and everything under the sun can be sent to you that way. Movie recommendation of the week. Well, time of recording this, I've been going down a big old rabbit hole of M. Night Shyamalan movies. And I'm going to tell you, I rewatched Old, still rolls. I love Old. And it made me cry, weirdly. Don't know what that says about me. The Sixth Sense broke me. And I think that movie now is more than just the scares. I think it's actually really poetic and beautiful, and made me really want to hug my wife because it essentially is about a guy at the end that has to let go of being a spirit around his wife and pass to the other side. And I was like, oh shit.
Spoilers.
Well, I mean, come on, it's 25 years old. We all know that one. But
that movie is 25 years old. That's crazy.
Lies.
Movie that's 20 years old was The Village, and that movie
rocks.
That movie rocks. That score from James Newton Howard and Deacon's cinematography, incredible. But the goat of all goats, Signs. Signs
is real good.
Still, I know we have the main. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now you brought it back. God damn it. We brought it back around. Genuinely scary. I did watch for the first time a movie that I had never seen. And I had put it off for years. And I don't think Jay knows this. I finally watched After Earth.
Oh, yeah. I mean, good for you for avoiding that for as long as you did.
I still have never watched it.
It's so bad.
So I put it on because I was a madman and I bought all of M. Night's movies on Blu-ray at my local discount store.
Including Avatar?
I did. Well, hear me out. Okay. Avatar and After were actually in the bargain bin for $1.99. Now,
still not.
You can stream it on Max, right?
I know, but I there's something. One. That just really hurt that Karen said that if I had to choose between physical media and streaming, she knows I will not choose streaming.
I could take that disc out of the case and you would never know for the rest of your life.
I would because then I would
just sense a disturbance in the force.
I would. I got way too much physical media in the other room. Okay, folks.
All I see is Colin Farrell behind you. That was not helpful.
That's a different kind of physical media. But Last Airbender, I still don't think is as bad as people think it is because I've never seen the television show. I just think that it's a boring film upon rewatch. But After Earth is an abomination and a genuine pre-slap in the face to audiences way before he slapped Chris Rock. I'm going to just tell you that. I mean, truly one of the worst movies I think I've ever seen. And but that's the great thing about an M. Night Shyamalan movie. All of them, for the most part, are under 2 hours long. And so you can get in and out in about an hour 45 to every one of his movies. He's like Wes Anderson. If you don't like Wes Anderson's style or everything, guess what? It's only an hour 30, hour 40 of your life. You'll be able to get it back. I would never want to see a 3-hour M. Night Shyamalan movie because I would be terrified. An extended cut of something would also be terrifying. But just go watch his movies. They're really fun and interesting. And his run from Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs in the Village, when people online talk about like a 4-film run, you know, they always mention like Coppola and they mention Altman and Scorsese and all these other directors. For modern directors, that is a crazy great run of 4 movies right there. Sadly, he's not yet replicated that for me, but those movies are also some of the best times I've ever had in a theater too. So
we should do a whole episode about that.
We may have, by the time that this podcast comes out, we may have already done that. And you'll probably hear more about that in detail on that episode. But yeah, it's been like, and you'll probably see the reason why I've been watching all these movies is a giant article that's going to go up on the website. And I may or may not have extensive thoughts on all these movies. So that is going to do it for this week's episode. We will be back next week. We'll be talking about the Tree of Life for the longest podcast that Jay Ledbetter has ever recorded in his life. And he's not actually going to get mad this time if we go long.
It's a solo pod.
Yeah, it's just Jay talking into the void, which actually fits for a Tree of Life episode, really. But we'll be back next week. So thank you all so much for listening. And we will see you all next time.